Okay, and I think that we'll start with just a few quick introductions. I know staff know each other, but our members of the public might not know staff. So I'll start. My name is Jessica. I am a transportation planner at the TJPDC and MPO. Let's see, I'm just going to go across my screen. I'll start with staff and then we'll have the public introduce themselves. So Tim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jessica. My name is Tim Padalino. I'm a parks planner for Albemarle County in the Parks and Recreation Department.
Thanks, Tim. Dan, go ahead.
Sure. My name is Dan Butch. I'm a planner in transportation and community development of Albemarle County.
Bill Palmer.
Yeah, hi, Bill Palmer with the University of Virginia. I'm GIS planner in the Office of the Architect there, doing a lot of land use campus planning work. I will probably have to jump off this in about a half hour, and then I may be able to jump back on, but we'll see. I have a couple meetings going on today.
Well, we're happy you made some time for us. Amanda, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Amanda Ponce. I'm the bicycle and pedestrian coordinator with the city.
Right, and that's all our staff. So we'll do members of the public. Annie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? You are still on mute, Annie.
Thank you. Right, Annie Stafford, and I live at the intersection of Chesapeake Street and Riverside.
Great, thanks, Annie. Peter, go ahead.
I am Peter Krebs from the Piedmont Environmental Council.
Kath, go ahead.
I'm Kath Welch. I live in Albemarle County and am interested in seeing what's going on about bicycling primarily, and hoping maybe to volunteer with someone in some capacity.
Thanks for joining us. Bill Emery.
My name is Bill Emery. I live in the Willow Mills neighborhood, and I'm on the Ravenna River Basin Commission. I think we're sort of a sleepy group, and I love to bike in between the river and Charlottesville, and hope to be able to bike in between the county and Charlottesville.
Great, thank you, Bill. And last we have Stephen Bach. We're just doing introductions. If you want to just introduce yourself and maybe mention why you're interested in joining these meetings. Stephen, you are still on mute.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Bach. I'm a city resident on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee with the city, and have been interested in transportation matters around the area for a long time.
Great, thanks for joining us, Stephen. And now our real last but not least, Chris, do you want to just quick introduce yourself and tell folks what you do?
I'm Chris Genzik. I'm the city of Charlottesville's Greenways and Trails planner and park planner.
Great, thanks. All right, everyone, I'm going to share my screen, which is just a PowerPoint that helps me keep track of everything. Let's see here. Okay, so this is our agenda for today. It was the same agenda that was online. So we're going to start by talking about the Ravenna River feasibility study and crossing, the bike and ped count results, and then a 3-notch trail update, and then some roundtable comments and roundtable updates and comments. All right. So this is a small group. Feel free to just stop me if you have any questions, throw in any comments. This is for both staff or members of the public. You're all free to contribute. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and minimize all the people I'm seeing over on this side here. So, okay, beginning with the potential bicycle and pedestrian crossing of the Ravenna River. So a while ago, the Virginia Department of Transportation consultants conducted a feasibility study on 2 potential routes across the Ravenna River. These are bike and ped routes. TJPDC staff, VDOT, City of Charlottesville, and Albemarle County worked together to host a public workshop on November 12th to inform the public of the results of the feasibility study and gather feedback from the public. TJPDC staff also received over 2 dozen emails on the project between November 8th and December 1st. So we took all of the questions and comments from both the workshop and from those emailed comments. We went through them all and decided that they fell into the following categories. So we had also made the consultant's feasibility study, the technical document, available on our website prior to that workshop. And people read it and people engaged with the content. And that's why they had a ton of technical questions and considerations that they brought up in both the emails and at the workshop. People had questions and comments a lot about project cost, about the accessibility of the project. Was the slope too much for folks in wheelchairs or other users? The connectivity of the project, environmental concerns. A lot of people were concerned about the impact of constructing a bridge in the waterway, and there were also comments about the concerns about view shed. What would it look like and feel like to have a bridge in such a nice natural area? Also, there were parking concerns, especially on the west side, but really both sides of the project area. I'm just taking 1 second to admit another person to our meeting. All right, and there was a very big chunk of comments that talked about the impacts of increased use on community character, again, especially on the west side of the project area, so in the city of Charlottesville, Woolen Mills area. One of the takeaways from all of that feedback was that public feedback has illuminated a desire, should the project move forward, for the project design to respect and maintain the character of the neighborhoods near Riverview Park. Discussion around this project offered residents an opportunity to voice pre-existing concerns regarding the overuse of Riverview Park and related parking concerns, as well as traffic concerns related to new commercial uses in Woolen Mills. So basically, that is all to say that this project is, and concerns about community character related to this project are symptomatic of like a larger issue that people are concerned about and not just related to this particular project. So in summary, while neither of the two route options garnered clear support, those who stated their feelings about the project spoke positively about a bicycle and pedestrian crossing of the Rivanna River. And this is consistent with previous public engagement done to create earlier planning documents. So to tally it up, in the workshop, there were 63 comments and questions. A lot of them didn't speak either positively or negatively about the project. They were true questions or true comments that didn't really say how people felt about the project. But 3 of them did speak very obviously positively about the project, and 2 of them spoke very obviously negatively about the project. Of the 25 emailed comments, those were a little bit more clear. 15 of those 25 emailed comments spoke positively of the project. None of them were like super clearly negative, and the rest of them were, you know, just, they didn't have a clear positive or negative vibe to them. All right, one question that came up repeatedly through the workshop and in the emailed comments and questions was this idea that there might be other places that the crossing could cross the river, not just the 2 locations that the consultants looked at. So what we can share with people is that initially the consultants identified 6 potential crossing locations in the study area, not just the 2 that we looked at. They presented those 6 locations to staff in February of 2020. 2 route options were chosen from those 6. And the 4 options that were omitted were those that were infeasible to construct because of property ownership, accessibility issues, known protected resources, and steep grades. And those reasons all came from our local staff who are really familiar with the area, who had that information that the consultants were looking for, that the consultants didn't know themselves when they put together those 6 potential crossing locations that they originally presented in February. All right, so to wrap this up, on our website now, there is the feasibility study from the consultants. That's that technical document that people have been able to see for a while. There's a recording of the November 12th workshop. There's a summary of the public feedback, both the feedback that we got in the workshop and from the emails. It's kind of like a longer version of the slides I just showed you guys. There is a Q&A sheet for questions that remained unanswered at the end of the workshop. So for anyone who attended, you know that that workshop was intended to last an hour, but there was so much great engagement from the public that it ended up lasting a bit longer than that. And even so, we weren't able to get to all of the questions that people typed into the question box. So the staff, we worked together to answer all of those questions, put them in a document, and now those are on the website. We also emailed them out to people. If you are one of the people who got multiple emails from me with this information. I'm sorry, I had some weird issues with my email. So a couple people got a few emails about this. All right. And lastly, we have a PDF of the original 6 options that staff narrowed down to 2. So if you wanted to see what were those 6 options and why staff might have had some concerns about the feasibility of the 4 that they dropped, you can look at that original document from the consultants. So next steps, it's really up to the localities. If they feel that they want to pursue the project, they can ask the MPO to help. We're happy to help. And just a heads up that the MPO will begin our new smart scale process where we're trying to include more public engagement on projects that might be a little bit more controversial. That process will begin in January or February of next year when we hear back about the existing smart scale or the last round of smart scale stuff and what was funded. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and just take a minute to hear what people think.
Can you hear me? I was just gonna, on that last note, just put a timeline of smart scales every 2 years. We just submitted applications in August of 2020. So, you know, that will give us enough time to initiate that process with both localities and the MPO and start early and see where that takes us. But it would be a year and a half from then, basically. So.
Yeah, that's great, helpful information, Dan. So just to add a little bit more to it. So the PDC has taken a look at our whole smart scale process and revamped it so that we have this opportunity to get more engagement on projects that would be considered controversial. And the whole point of us asking the localities to move it, I guess, ask for the PDC or MPO's help this early in the game when it's a 2-year application cycle is just really so we can get all that extra engagement. Any other comments or questions?
Hey, Jessica, I had just an assumption based on what you said, but I want to get to fact, not assumption. So you're waiting to hear what's happening with the last round of smart scale because some that were not chosen in the last slate might want to be retried in this next slate. Is that the reason why?
Yes, that is exactly the reason why. Thanks. Annie, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks. I just want to say, if you looked at the summary of the public feedback, that's my quote in there. The one that starts, I either walk along the river or bike along the river almost every day, which I did this morning. Chris, it was just beautiful with all the ice. What wasn't included here is that I too am very excited about the thought of having a bridge across the river. I've lived here for almost 20 years and gosh, what a fun thing it would be to connect with the trail on the other side. I have a question, but then I also just want to state that on this, for those who may not know, the city is also considering possibly a boat launch also at the end of Chesapeake Street. I think that just, I understand, Jessica, that there are processes and, there's like these 2 different streams that are going. One is the planning district, one is the city, but it seems that is at the very heart of planning, that there should be awareness that this is possibly on the horizon. And then I do have just one specific question about the locations. I just remember years ago, there was talk about creating some sort of a bike and pedestrian bridge near Free Bridge or even hanging off of Free Bridge. And what was the reason for not considering that?
Great. Well, thanks for those comments and questions. It sounds like there's 2 different things. You have your question and the comment about the boat launch. So Chris, I'm going to pick on you to talk a little bit more about the boat launch and its role in the process, or how it's being considered with the bike and pedestrian bridge that we've been talking about. And Chris, you might also be the best person to answer the other question, or maybe someone else, some other staff member who's been here longer than I have, regarding why the study area was chosen for this particular project. So go ahead, Chris.
Okay, for the Riverview Park, anything related to Riverview Park, that's probably one of the reasons I'm on all of these committees, is I am the kind of the make sure all the things on the city side are known by all parties. And we, with the COVID this past year, and I think Annie's very aware of this, Riverview Park all of a sudden, while we've been trying to get the community to recognize the river, they all recognized it on April 15th and they all showed up on April 16th. And that's created some issues at Riverview Park because it's really one of our only public fronts to the river other than Penn Park. So we became aware this summer that it's not tenable to have quite that much action going on in one spot at Riverview. We started discussing the possibility of, because that one boat access and water access, a lot of people use that water access that aren't in boats, they're just families taking their kids down. Particularly with COVID, I don't know if it would have been such a big deal in a non-COVID environment. They were all jammed up on that one little staircase going down there. And we started thinking, do we need two? And we looked at a few technical things about what that would look like, but there's no decisions been made about would we do two. If we were to do that, we would have a public meeting. We know there's sensitivity to where the old pump station used to be underground and they were going to put one above ground, and the neighborhood said that's not going to happen. We want that space to stay relatively open and natural in that general feeling. So the update is the boat launch went to Palmyra 2 weeks ago. The flood ate it. We have no staircase, boat launch, water access at Riverview Park anymore because the flood picked it up and we can't find it. I went walking down through Monticello a couple weeks ago. We can't find it. So we're going to have to rebuild a boat launch. We walked a little bit the other day and we've been considering we could probably just rebuild it where it was. We have some access options that would help keep the cars with boats separate from the people with boats that don't necessarily involve a new parking lot. So in terms of how that's all going to come together, we're looking at this bridge project. Certainly if this bridge narrowed down to it's going to come in through the Chesapeake entrance there and in that general area, that would certainly affect anything we then did in terms of river access at Riverview Park. And even if it doesn't come through there and affect it, anything we do at Riverview Park, we'd have more public input and discussion about scale of any access improvements or expansions or parking or anything like that at Riverview Park. So they are being done in concert, but neither one of them is at a point where anybody knows for sure what's going to happen. So given that the boat ramp disappeared and that the water staircase disappeared, city believes we're going to have some meetings this winter with the neighbors and park users, because by summer we'd like to have something back in place. We don't know yet what that something might be. And in terms of the bridge down by Free Bridge option, there's been a Free Bridge study going on for quite a while. I don't know exactly, but my thoughts were putting another bridge right next to a bridge when probably Free Bridge could be improved for bicycle pedestrian travel. It would seem a little bit duplicitous, and the idea being there's always been a plan to put one up by Penn and Darden and the Lewis and Clark Exploratory Center, and that one might be 10 years on the horizon, where one down in the Woolen Mills over to Pantops area, it's a more direct connection to things on Pantop side, things on the city side. So I believe, and this is just my belief, I don't remember the technical reason, that Free Bridge was left as the Free Bridge project might still build an independent bridge and or improve sidewalks, bike paths, or whatever on the existing structure of Free Bridge in some way. And that this downstream option by whatever this is, about a mile downstream, was to spread out your desire lines in a certain sense. So that not everything's bottlenecked up at Free Bridge, but I may not be stating that correctly. Maybe somebody else remembers why this study isn't studying the Free Bridge area as much as maybe the Free Bridge study is still studying the Free Bridge area.
I mean, I think you covered most of it, Chris. But I think just wanted to add with the recent Jefferson area bike and pedestrian plan update that was last year at this time. It finished fall 2019. That had its whole public outreach process, both localities involved. And I believe from that plan, it did highlight more of a bike pedestrian connectivity across the river in that location within the plan. So I think that that's where the influence was for the location.
Thanks, Dan. That's definitely right. And then correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sad we don't have Chuck here because he would be able to give a better answer. But I think I recall something about how there were thoughts about improving bike and pedestrian access across Free Bridge, but that bridge is like up for being redone at some point, but not in the near future. So there was this idea of like, we don't want to wait as long as it's going to take for that bridge to get redone with like state money, but we don't want to put any investment into it to improve the bike ped connection now, knowing that maybe a decade from now it's going to all be torn down and redone anyway. Does that sound right to anybody else?
It does sound familiar. I think, yeah, the concept was if there's any update to Free Bridge, we would want to keep those a bike pedestrian bridge parallel to that on the same timeline. I remember that type of conversation with Chuck. Sounds familiar.
And there may be some notion that, Free Bridge might not be the most audibly comfortable area to be walking across or even riding a bike on. That one side's got a pretty wide sidewalk, but it's doable. It's kind of like trails next to Route 29. They might be perfectly safe. It's just you're next to a whole bunch of moving cars and it's not a real calm, natural setting, but you could ride a bike or walk across Free Bridge now. And again, there might have been a theory that, if you build a whole nother bridge there and you haven't expanded things in other areas, you're kind of being duplicitous. So yeah, we all do hope that Free Bridge gets even better for bike ped. But I think it was tended to be not part of this particular project for that reason.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Annie. And I'll also add that, like, just for people who don't know, best practice is to have a great density of bike and pedestrian routes. So different facility types are going to appeal to different people. I think that's what Chris was talking about. Some people like how Free Bridge is right now. They feel comfortable biking on it, walking across it. That's fine for them. It's the most direct route. And for those people, it's great. But having the multiple options, having something really quiet and secluded, like what's being described for this bike and ped crossing near Riverview Park, that's something that's going to appeal to a different set of users. And we want to have all of those options available so that everyone feels comfortable getting around however they feel best. Okay, any other questions or comments related to this bridge project? Cool, okay. So we'll move on to the bike and ped count.
One quick one.
Oh, go ahead.
Jessica, I've got a quick one. I asked Bob Brown, one of the questions had to do with the grades of Chesapeake Market, I think Broadway, leaving the bridge area and heading towards downtown. Bob Brown, our GIS guy, is going to provide us with a piece of information that's a GIS map that shows those grades. So we'll be able to insert that into the answer one of those questions and just add it to the pile of known information. Is, how steep is Chesapeake compared to Market, compared to Broadway, and people can then put that in the hopper as we continue on this.
Great, thanks, Chris. That'll be a great addition to our answers. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again.
Hey, Jessica, real quick,
sure.
since you're telling questions, I heard one at the Belmont Neighborhood Association meeting this past week that I was not able to answer. Does the study speak about the grade from the street, the Chesapeake Street, to the peak of the bridge, and then to the other side? I couldn't tell from looking at it, like, is that going to be a level thing? Is there going to be a slope from one side to the other, et cetera? And I'm not expecting an answer in this meeting, but adding it to the hopper of questions.
I think I do have a very simple answer for you, Peter, but you can tell me if you were looking for something more detailed. So basically, the feasibility study does say that there will be some slope, but that slope will always remain below a 5% grade for the entirety of that particular option from Chesapeake to Pantops. The other one, the second option starting from the end of Market, was also going to have a less than 5% grade all the way across the river, but then the pathway to get up from the end of the bridge to the end point of the trail was going to, at some points, have something that was about a 6.5% grade, if I remember correctly.
Thank you. That's super detailed. I'll forward that to her.
Great. Anything else? Okay. Great. All right, I'm going to share my screen and move us on to the bike and pedestrian count. I think Kath and Stephen were definitely some volunteers who helped us with this. So thank you guys. And let's see here. I'm trying to bring us over to, here we go. Hope everyone sees this. Can someone audibly say, yes, you see it if you do?
Yep, I can see that.
Great, wonderful. So this is our, my lovely spreadsheet. So for the bike and pedestrian count, this committee came up with a bunch of locations where either work, bike and pedestrian infrastructure work has been done recently, is going to be done in the near future, or is going to be done in the distant-ish future. And the point of this particular bike and ped count, as opposed to some other counts where you're trying to get a broad sense of what where people are biking and walking and what the rate of biking and walking is in a community, our bike and ped count was a little bit more focused, where we were just trying to better understand the locations that we picked, in part because of the infrastructure work that either has been done or is going to be done there. So we ended up with 9 locations. I had so many great volunteers that we added a 10th location, which was Riverview Park. We had morning and evening weekday counts at every single location. We did not have any weekend counts. What we did, and here I'll pop over to something very straightforward. So this is one of the more straightforward intersections. What the counters did is that they went and sat out at the intersection for the 2 hours in the morning or the 2 hours in the afternoon, and they counted the number of people coming from each of these directions. So either from the north, from the south, from the east, or from the west. Things are not a perfect grid in Charlottesville and surrounding Albemarle County. So these are like approximately from the north, from the south. And we told people what direction, what roadway they would be coming from to correlate to that particular direction. So anyway, they counted the bikes, they counted the pedestrians, and they counted some subjective characteristics about those people. So if it looked like, and what I told people in my little training was, if you're more than 50% sure that the person biking by or walking by is a woman, go ahead and tally them in this female category. The same thing for, we were counting the number of children. So people under the age of 16, people who appeared to be non-white, people who appeared to have some sort of physical disability, people who are wearing a helmet, and people who are riding their bikes the wrong way. So you're supposed to always ride with traffic in the bike lane, but sometimes people would be riding against traffic, and that was something we wanted to pay attention to. So what I did was take everyone's count sheets, put them in for each count location, broken down by 15-minute increment, broken down by the direction they were coming from, and then I added it all up. So this is our final grand totals. So we have for each location, the number of bikes who went through that intersection for the whole day. So for the 4 hours in the morning and the 4 hours, or the 2 hours in the morning and the 2 hours in the afternoon. And then a total of the bikes and pedestrians that went through that intersection. And then we have the total women who went through the intersection, the percentage of the daily total that were women, the number of children going through the intersection, and the percentage of the daily total that were children, same for non-white. And then for physical disabilities, we just had a much lower count. And I'm not sure if that was because that can be a harder thing to tell if someone is not using, like a wheelchair or a walker. Do you put it if they're having a hard time walking? I think most people would have chosen no. Helmets, and then wrong way riding. We saw so few people wrong way riding at these particular locations. I'm almost tempted to get rid of the category in the future just to make a cleaner count sheet, but maybe not. Maybe that'll change at different count locations in a future year. And then over here is our category of motorized bikes or scooters that came through the area. So if a kid was riding a scooter and they're just using their feet, that wasn't counted. That was counted as a bike. That was not counted as a motorized thing. Whereas, let's see here. Whereas if someone was riding like one of the Veo rides, scooters, those, or a motorized bike, an electric bike of some kind, they would have been counted here. So I'm just going to close this up for a second.
Jessica, the Monticello in 6 with the wrong way riding is kind of interesting to me. I wonder, do you think that is somebody riding the wrong, because we have that contraflow lane and then we have the shared lane. So do we think that that is somebody riding the wrong way in the contraflow lane or riding the wrong way in the street?
So that's a good question, and I'm not 100% sure what our afternoon counter did. I put on the count sheet instructions for that particular intersection that the contraflow lane was not riding the wrong way, but that might have been overlooked because it was definitely overlooked by me when I was doing the one-on-one tutorial. So that's a good question. If you're really curious, I'll follow up with our afternoon counter.
Okay.
Cool.
Was that Carl by chance? I know I saw him one day.
Yes, it was Carl.
Okay. All right. Well, I can ask him.
Okay, great. Thanks for saving me some work. All right. Anyone else have any comments or questions? One thing I'll quick add is that we are planning to make this available on our website. So like the entire Excel file. So people, if they are better with data than I am or something like that, you can go ahead and take a look at each intersection. You can, play with the data, whatever is helpful to you. So any general comments or questions, especially from our volunteers, I'm curious what you guys thought about the process and any points you have for improving the count sheet in particular. If not, or while you're thinking of that, I'll also, oh, Annie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't aware that this count was going on, and it makes me ask the question. So in Riverview Park, sort of at the inner loop, there are 2 wires across the path. What are those? I thought that those were for counting.
Those are for counting, and those are out there all the time. Amanda, if you wanted to add a little bit to talk about that counter, it's an automated counter, but we did have the people counters out there. In part, it was initially designed to kind of validate the data that Amanda and the city is getting from that automated counter. But it also, obviously, our people counters are able to get more information than an automated counter was. So the automated counter isn't checking if people are, children or women or whatever, but our people counters can do that. Amanda, did you want to say anything else about the automated counters you have around the city?
Sure. Yeah, so that is one that's out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it counts bicycles and pedestrians and is able to distinguish between the two, but doesn't provide the same level of, information, what Jessica was saying about, women, people of color, are they wearing helmets, children, that kind of thing. So we have 10 counters that are in different places throughout the city. And there's actually a website where you can find all of that information. VDOT hosts a web page that has all of that information for all of the different counters, automatic counters that are deployed throughout the state. I can find that and put it in the chat for folks.
Oh, I really appreciate that. So I don't want to belabor this point. I can see how that would count bicycles, but I do not see how it would count people because everybody I know steps over them.
Yeah. So there's 2 different pieces of equipment. There are the tubes that count the bicycles, and then mounted on a sign pole is a box that has an infrared counter that counts anything that's kind of moving past. So it doesn't double count because of the tube counter there. It does its own math and sort of figures out which are people versus bicycles. The one thing it doesn't do is, for example, If people are walking in groups, we might not get an accurate count because it might only count one. It might not count three if it only senses, one person kind of walking by. It also might pick up something like wildlife. So, there are some reasons to still do the validation that Jessica was talking about to kind of really see if the counter is accurately counting everything that's going by.
And are
And
they?
I'll add that
Also, I might add that I was at that intersection counting, and I'm not a technical person, but it looked to me like it was not functioning the day I was down there. It was disconnected looking.
Yeah, I think Kath, you mentioned that, and Amanda, did you confirm at the time that it wasn't working for a short time?
I believe I can't remember the exact dates, but yes, we were having some issues with that particular counter, and it should be up and working now. I think it was kind of beginning of November that we finally got everything fixed and connected. So yeah, at the time, I don't think there was really an opportunity to validate data because it was not working.
And
Thank
another nice thing is those are out all the time. It's been really useful in our world. You can say that 350 youth signed up for our basketball program, and when council says, well, how busy are the trails? And you say, kind of busy on Tuesday, doesn't help you get funding to expand trail systems, where you can say 927 people walk the Riverview Trail on Tuesday. They can start to see the story that, well, A, we need more trails, and this is actual scientific data. And the other thing we noticed this year kind of gave us some COVID data, where we were thinking like, man, the trails really got busy. Now we know some of them quadrupled overnight because we had those 24-hour counters out. So that kind of data, above and beyond how this group uses it, has been really helpful for, in some senses, storytelling. Like, see, your surveys are right. More people use trails than maybe, play lacrosse or something like that. And we have real numbers now. We move them all over town. We put them up at Ragged Mountain. It's been kind of mind-blowing to me to see. We opened the new Hayward trails, and without even a press release, those things were packed. Kind of shows we're bulging at the seams with our needs for trails and bike ped things.
Oh, another anomaly about that location is, and it probably doesn't apply to other locations, is that people were going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I noticed it in particular about my helmet count, that I counted this woman with no helmet 4 times, but there was only one of her. But, kind of skewed the results a bit. But lots of people were counted.
I had
more
a
than
similar thing over at Monticello in 6th, where there was a guy who was like walking laps around the block. So he was counted multiple times. But yeah, same guy. To your point, Annie, about the accuracy, I would say
Yes.
they're about 90 to 95% accurate as a whole. So it's, it's pretty good.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question for staff about this overcounting question. I'm curious what your thoughts. So my initial thought about the potential overcounting of people who are doing laps or going back and forth at Riverview Park is that it's okay to count those people multiple times. That's what I told the counters to do, because even if it's just the one person, they're utilizing that that trail or that infrastructure repeatedly within that time period. And I think that counts, and it's worth counting that. I think it does really skew our more subjective data. Like, if it's just one woman doing laps around a block, that's not, 5 women in that 2-hour period. But I still think it's valuable and worth counting, and it would not make sense to ask people in the spring to try to keep track of everyone and not count them again. But I'm curious what staff think and how you guys feel about that.
I'd like to interrupt as a non-staff person for just a second. And as a user of Riverview, what it means to me is the thing is too short. Yes, I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If I want to do 10 miles, I got to go back and forth, 5 times. That's what it means to me. We need more.
So that means I think it's good to be aware that that's happening, but I'm just like a broken record. We can't be judging the worthiness of one trip versus another, right? If someone, you don't know is if he filled up his pocket with, you know, pennies that he's ferrying to someone on the other side of the block. We don't, you know, that's transportation, you know, that's freight hauling. We don't get to know. So if someone's walking on the sidewalk, they're walking on the sidewalk, full stop.
And
Any
I
other
would just
comments?
put it in like an asterisk, like here, the Riverview counter counted this asterisk. Some of those might have been deer, you know, so you tell people who read the data, we know there's going to be some anomalies here and there. Like I noticed it was one lady walking around the block during this hour. I think as long as you're transparent about it, you keep the numbers in, because if it was a car going past your house, it would be traffic making noise, whether it was the same car or 20 cars. But if you made an asterisk at the bottom, you know, like there's going to be deer at Riverview and this lady was walking laps around this block, then people can draw their own conclusions, but keep all the data in the same data set. Could be one way to make sure that's accurate.
Great. And I will comment, Chris, that people did do that. So I think Amanda put a little note at the bottom of her count sheet saying that there was someone doing laps, and Kath, I think you did the same thing, or at least notified me in your email. So, and I tried to take any of those kinds of comments and keep them in the spreadsheet. So under the like big chunk of data for each intersection or for each count location, below that, there's some highlighted stuff that are the comments that I pulled from those count sheets. So that information hasn't been entirely lost, even if it's not captured in the numerical data that you guys saw on the grand total count sheet. Okay, any other comments about the process or about the data itself? I'll bring back up the data because I did have one comment for people. Okay. Anyone else have any comments? So one thing I noticed, and I'll preface this by saying the reason I was so excited to include this more subjective data about women and children was because I think that, you know, making sure that we're investing in areas of town where, you know, we get a wide variety of users. We're not just catering to the loudest people or whatever. We're meeting everyone's needs. One thing I'll notice is that there were not as many children being counted at Riverview Park. And I know it was a weekday, but I was still surprised by that because that seems like the safest place to take kids to do lots of biking and walking. Where we did see the most children, at least by category or by percentage of total users, was Emmett and Angus. So that's a really busy intersection, and crossing Emmett there or 29 there feels like really stressful. So I was surprised to see so many children making that crossing. And it just kind of highlighted for me why having this data is really important, because it shows that, you know, when you're thinking about people crossing 29 or crossing Emmett, that's not, it's not just, you know, adults trying to get to work or to shopping. It's like families and kids too. Anyway, that was just my little soapbox. So any other questions or comments about the data itself? No? Cool. Okay, well, that was fun for me. I hope it's helpful for the localities. What I'm going to work on next is taking all of that directional data and putting it on a map. So you'll be able to see by roadway how many bikes and peds are coming from each direction for each intersection. So I think that'll be a more visual way of looking at it and might be more helpful for you guys. I'm also going to work on a methodology document, which we talked about when I put together the scope for this. And the purpose of that methodology document is so that we will be consistent in the future as the PDC counts other locations. We'll be really consistent about how we're doing it and make sure that the data makes sense over time. And also, if the localities have other locations that you want to count at that don't fit into the fall spring timeline, you'll have that methodology available and you'll be able to do it consistently. And then it'll just make a lot more sense to compare it to other data that the PDC has collected. So that's the point of that. And like I said, we'll put that whole spreadsheet on our website so that you can do whatever is helpful with it. All right. And then lastly, or almost lastly, we are moving on to our 3-notch discussion. So this is Chris was going to give us an update. Peter, it would also be really helpful if you chimed in with a couple of updates. And then I do hope that my colleague Sandy is going to join us shortly because she had some comments about how the PDC itself would be involved. So go ahead, Chris.
Okay, this is a statewide trail concept that I think most of us on the panel here are aware of, but a long time ago when they proposed opening the Blue Ridge Tunnel for bike ped tourism traffic 15, 20 odd years ago, a couple of us thought it'd be really cool to put a bike ped trail from Charlottesville out to and through the tunnel to get you to the valley. And we've kicked some ideas around and walked the corridor and kind of always thought about it. Every 5 years we'd say, yeah, it would be really cool to put a trail out there. Well, the tunnel's opened. We've had our eyes to the west for quite some time and probably a little further along, but not very far along in that general idea of where it might go. But the idea is it's a paved trail like the Virginia Capitol Trail between Jamestown and Richmond. Probably 10 years ago, we kind of turned our eyes east and went, you know, they've got this Capitol Trail that just opened. Wouldn't it be really cool if we could connect Charlottesville back to the Capitol Trail and through the tunnel? We would have a trail from Jamestown, Williamsburg, all the way through to Stanton, through some of the most scenic, historic, beautiful area in the country. This could be a economic tourism generator, as well as a lot of people, particularly professors and things, move here. They get a house in Ivy and they're like, when I was at UC Davis, I could ride my bike. I mean, it's 4 miles to Charlottesville and I wouldn't ride my bike. You couldn't pay me enough. What's going on? So there are local transportation needs for this in our area. And then say in the Louisa Goochland area, probably more of a recreational system. Through Zion Crossroads, the locals could use it. But we are now engaged with Louisa, Goochland, Henrico, Fluvanna, Albemarle, the city of Charlottesville, the Central Shenandoah PDC, Stanton, Fishersville, Waynesboro. Obviously the Richmond section's built all the way back to Jamestown, but the Capitol Foundation has been a really good resource in terms of how did you get that thing built? How do you maintain it? How do you use it? What events do you have? And there's a growing excitement among the localities in the state to see this as a big piece of the state system. So we are currently in a phase of working to get some big fat line that says Richmond to Charlottesville through Zion Crossroads, or do we go through Scottsville and stay along the James, to start to thin those lines down to have the localities adopted into their comp plan so that when roads are improved or we get opportunities to get easements, we can start piecing this thing together that we know is a 15-year, 20-year plan, unless the governor comes in and says, here's $50 million, go crazy, get it built like they did for the Capitol Trail. But it's neat to see that what was sort of a small group of people had a dream starting to become more of a bureaucratic reality. And we hope soon starting to become something you can write grants for and get asphalt and trucks and install the handrails and the kiosks and get the public to actually have this thing built. My role is not so much in the city because the 3-notch trail through the city is Market Street, the downtown mall, West Main Street, University Avenue. It's probably going to be mostly a bike lane sidewalk system. The Ravenna Bridge would probably be along the lines of the old 3-notch road, the original 3-notch road. And then it would go through kind of the Monticello Shadwell area, and then we got to figure out where to go. So my role on this project is more, not my professional role. It's just as a trail person who really likes these things. And I won't ride a bike much in traffic, but these kind of trails really excite me. I rode the Capitol Trail this past summer, and it's kind of experience I think more people would like, particularly with an electric assist bike. More of the population can do this long range transportation and fill the Airbnbs and go to vineyards. And I think it's going to be kind of the wave of the future. So some others might comment on that, but we're basically trying to move from a foggy dream to a misty, humid rain, and eventually, you know, get the thing built. But we're kind of early stages, and we're just working on that as a group. There's a few people here working on it, and then across the state at much higher levels trying to get this thing built.
I mean, Chris pretty much covered the exact state of where we are. A few specifics in there that he didn't mention. The Virginia Capitol Trail Foundation has been more than just supportive of this project. They surprisingly and joyfully for us, they see it as an extension of their own mission. So they've really taken some ownership of this idea. So it could be thought of no longer as a 3-notch trail, but truly a Bay to Blue Ridge extension of the Virginia Capitol Trail, which is a much easier story to tell because the Capitol Trail is a thing. It's so successful. Many people have good experience with it. There's that. And then also Kat Anthony, who is the director of the Capitol Trail, and I are both making a very short presentation about it on Monday at the Virginia Outdoor Recreational Caucus meeting, which is hosted by Virginia Delegate David Bolova and Virginia Senator Emmett Hanger. So this is a statewide project. Staff from the various localities are working on it. And now even legislators are starting to be interested. They asked us to present about it. So that's super exciting. So it'll be an opportunity for you to learn more and also have a tiny amount of FaceTime with legislators. I'm about to post a link for that event in the chat. Thank you.
So Peter, actually one thing I'm hoping you'll talk a little bit more about. So the last meeting I was at in regards to the 3-notch trail was the PDCs were coming together to talk about how they could work together on this fit. Peter, you guys talked about creating some sort of narrative so that it would be easier to, talk about the project. Has there been any movement on the narrative?
Great point. And the answer is within my head, yes. And I'm sure also within Ellie's head, yes, but we haven't put anything on paper that we can share. And I'm writing down right narrative so I can share. And one other specific that Chris didn't mention that is of relevance to this discussion is this Woolen Mills pedestrian bridge would be a part of this Bay to Blue Ridge Trail because it connects to the actual, one of the few extant parts of the 3-notch road right there on the other side of the Rivanna.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, once you get that narrative, I'd be happy to put it, share it as much as I can. So any other comments or questions about the 3-notch trail from either the staff or public? Okay. So if Sandy joins us, I'm going to have her pop in and talk a little bit more about what the PDC is, how the PDC wants to get involved. Really broadly, I'll state the same thing that she stated at that meeting of the PDCs that Chris and Peter were at, which is to say that we as a PDC MPO can be very involved in transportation projects because that's part of our purpose is to facilitate transportation projects with the localities. We can be less involved if it's more exclusively a recreational project. So just keeping that in mind as you guys move forward. All right, that takes us to our last agenda item, which is just roundtable. If staff want to share any particular updates about stuff they're working on or any public engagement you have planned, if the public has any just general bike questions, bike or pedestrian questions, that's what this time is for. So, and we moved really quickly through everything. So, we have time for this. Why don't we start with Dan? You haven't been able to speak in a while, so I'll let you go first.
Sure. So yeah, just finishing up the whole process with the PDC, with the Rivanna River crossing study, and definitely anticipating next steps with that, which this meeting will be definitely updated on that. Internally for the county, working with Parks and Rec, also on our plate is starting some discussions with VDOT for some land use permits, access easements, for some potential trail connections with that would be crossing VDOT right away or underpasses of bridges and stuff. So, we're trying to start the conversation with that. thinking ahead and planning ahead for some technical research with that. We're also just developing a sidewalk program for funding, maintenance funding with VDOT, looking at some GIS analysis towards inventorying existing conditions. So those are some projects that I have on my plate right now. You know, besides what has been mentioned with our city-county collaboration on some previous projects. I'm just trying to look through my stuff here. So that basically kind of covers some behind the scenes projects that are not so upfront. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I think we also should be having kind of coming near an end, or at least getting an update from the city on the One Map data initiative. I think, you know, that's been a project in the works for probably, it'll be going on 2 years now. So I think we're ready to kind of make that, hopefully I'm hoping come spring, summer, a publicly accessible tool of our infrastructure. But I haven't really been too involved with that recently, since that's been passed on for more QA, QC updating within the city. But, you know, I'm definitely anticipating that as well, getting a lot of requests for that. So that was on the focus for the past a year ago or so. So.
Yeah, as I understand it, you know, I think some of your GIS person and our GIS person are trying to kind of come together to meet to figure out how it'll be hosted. So it's still out there.
Yeah, I figured that they're doing some more technical emails and probably update us when we need to be updated. But I haven't really heard anything, but I just kind of know that they are working on things, collaborate, both city and county GIS team. So yeah, I'm sure it's a hefty collection of data and figuring out how to present this and yeah, I'm sure it's not an easy project. So.
Great. Is that everything for you, Dan? Okay, great. So how about Amanda next and then Chris?
I guess one thing that I'm excited about heading into the new year is we're going to be hosting a right-of-way book club. So we have purchased some books from that Angie Schmidt discussion and are hoping to have kind of a community read sometime in February. So invite anybody who's interested in that topic to join us. And then we're also internally looking at, there's a recent grant opportunity that was announced through the OIPI. I honestly don't know what that stands for, but it is a state level grant for some gap technical assistance. And so we're looking at applying for a grant to kind of take a look at all of the different transportation planning documents that we have and try to help figure out how we can prioritize those and fund those in a performance-based kind of way, and figure out which of those really align with PDOT's goals and can fund through state money versus what we should fund through local money. So that's something that we are hoping to put together and submit here in the coming weeks. It's a pretty quick turnaround as I understand it. So that's kind of the next thing on ours. Oh, and I'm sure folks have read the article about the Preston Avenue bike lanes. So basically Preston Avenue between Madison, let's say, and Rugby is going to be repaved. And so as we always do, we look for opportunities to add bike lanes with the repaving. Our initial analysis was that bike lanes would not be able to fit just by narrowing you know, all of the different lanes to lane widths, parking lane widths, to be able to provide the needed 5 to 6 feet. Obviously 6 feet is better, but the pavement width varies throughout that section. So we did post a notice about removing parking on Preston in order to accommodate the bike lanes. That has been met with a lot of negative feedback. So we're kind of taking a look at that. It is part of a larger project in our bike and ped master plan. We do have a priority sidewalk on that stretch as well. And so longer term, we would be looking at ways that we could accommodate the sidewalk and a bike lane by adjusting the width of the road. But for the repaving, we're kind of limited to the pavement width that's already out there. So working through that process in a public way, kind of we'll be doing that in the spring.
Thanks, Amanda. Did anyone have any questions for Amanda? Great, otherwise we'll go to Chris.
Great, I've got projects all around town, mostly VDOT grants we're trying to finish up that have been on the table for a while. The Rugby Avenue entrance into McIntyre Park, that project should be going to construction soon. Building a multi-use path there. The connection where Amanda was talking to Preston, where Madison Avenue comes through Washington Park, or would have. They had the right of way to do it, but they never built it. So connecting Madison Avenue to Madison Avenue, kind of down that hill from Washington Park. That's another VDOT grant. We've got a few projects on Meadow Creek for a bridge and trail system in the Brandywine area. I've been doing a lot of work up at Hayward, the new Hayward property, to put some trails on that new parkland by a Ragged Mountain. And I've got 3 property acquisitions that I think we started the week I got hired 13 years ago. Might actually sign closing deeds on them in the next month or so. I've been joking that my dry erase board should probably go to the Smithsonian because it's petrified at this point with names that have been on it for so long. I can't erase them anymore. A number of those will either reopen trails that people thought were open and got closed due to property issues, or allow us to finally connect. Their last property in a segment where I've got 7 out of 8, and this is the 8th that's finally going to come on board, which would allow us to build trails, open trails, and things like that. So I'm trying to stitch up on my VDOT grants and clear the table while there's kind of a slow year going on here, so that we can really rev back up when the new fiscal year comes around in July.
All right, any questions for Chris? All right, Peter, did you have anything you wanted to share either from PEC or the Greenways group?
Yeah, I had a couple of items. One is I wasn't quick enough on the mute button task. Dan Butch, this question. I thought I read in the paper that the Old Lynchburg Road / Sunset / Morris Creek suite of projects, it did survive funding and will be funded. Is that correct?
It was partially funded. And so we're having internal discussions on how to proceed with that, what the project scope is going to look like. And Chris, that's the conversation that Kevin and Chris need to hold and kind of update on. The update I have is we're kind of still scoping that out and see how to proceed and bring that to the board and see what they decide because of COVID and just how all the funding through VDOT, it came out partially funded. So we need to see how much we're initially putting into, how much we want to. And yeah, so this was for Morris Creek connection. That would have been a shared use path from, what's that bridge?
Sunset.
Yeah, the pedestrian bridge to Old Lynchburg Road, which would have pedestrian infrastructure within the county on Old Lynchburg Road, around 64, under 64, and then connecting to Azalea Park. So it kind of is broken up into 2 aspects. And so we wanted to see how to proceed with that.
Thank you, Dan. In this budget environment that we're in, any progress is actually quite welcome. Thank you. And from a again, following our logic of prioritizing connectivity where there's none rather than upgrading connectivity. If I were to vote between the pieces, I would imagine the getting past 64 on Old Lynchburg Road would most likely be the high priority, but that's only, that's just my opinion, of course. The Active Mobility Alliance has 2 upcoming dates to write on your calendar. And for those who aren't aware, the Active Mobility Alliance is sort of the advocacy nonprofit citizen sister to this gathering, where we talk about regional Charlottesville, Albemarle active transportation issues. Our next regular meeting will be on January 21st at 5 p.m. We're going to talk about finally choosing an actual name for the group, and also the Active Mobility Summit, which will be a larger annual event. And we do have a date for the Active Mobility Summit, and that'll be a half-day workshop on Friday, February 26th. It'll have a morning session from 10 till 11:30, and then an afternoon session from 1 to 3. So I'll write those dates in the chat, so if you didn't take notes, no problem.
Great, thanks, Peter. And we just had Shane from VDOT join us. Shane, we're just doing roundtable updates. Is there anything you wanted to mention coming from VDOT?
First, I'd like to apologize for joining late. I had another meeting that I jumped off of as soon as I could. Nothing specific from VDOT per se. Just like to tune in to see what's going on in the greater Charlottesville area.
Great, well, thanks for joining us, Shane. And one thing I think that you might be interested in that you missed from earlier is that we finished the bike and ped count. We have data for every intersection and for the grand totals. That's going to be up on our website. If you wanted to follow up with me later, I'm happy to chat more. All right, so also Annie, Kath, Stephen, as our members of the public, are there any questions you have at this point? Any comments, anything you want to share with us?
I would just like to say I really appreciated the time that everybody took to answer my questions. Thank you, Jessica in particular.
Thanks, Annie, for asking them. The whole point is to get lots of public feedback. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Kath?
No, I just enjoyed listening in and seeing what's going on. It's very heartening. I mean, the idea of being able to ride from Jamestown to Stanton, even if I'm in my wheelchair by then, that's good.
Wonderful. Stephen, just let us know if you have anything to add. Otherwise, we will start wrapping things up. And one thing I want to put to staff, and I'm sad that Chris already left, but I'll mention this to him and to Bill as well. So the PDC, before I came on, they finished the Jefferson area bike and ped plan. That's in a good place right now. We're a little ways off from our long range transportation plan. So we're kind of in this quieter year or two. We're also going to be working on our UPWP, our work plan for the next year very soon. So my hope for our January meeting is you guys before then talk to your leadership in your departments and let me know at our January meeting what it is the PDC can do to help you guys with your bike and ped planning. Like hopefully the bike and ped count is really helpful to you guys, but I'm sure there's other things that we could be doing to help you. So think about those, talk to your leadership and come back with some very specific asks that I can try to work into our UPWP with Sandy. And I see a little comment from Shane. Shane, did you want to tell us more what you just put in the chat?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up to you guys. Actually, I'll put the link in as well. We recently had an inquiry from Kat Anthony with the Virginia Capitol Trail Foundation. And apparently in the governor's budget amendment that is being reviewed or will be reviewed, there was $5 million put into, that's proposed in the budget amendment for the support of planning, development, and construction of multi-use trails. We are not very familiar with what this actually entails, but it is something that we were just made aware of, and it is listed as VDOT is the entity that I guess this money will be or potentially given to or allocated to. So again, we don't really know much about it at this point, other than it's I think the priority is trails 35 miles or more, which there aren't many of those that are much further along than the idea or the wish list, other than the Fall Line Trail, the Ashland to Petersburg Trail, and maybe the Eastern Shore Trail that was VDOT just completed a study. So I'm sending out a couple of links just to, sorry for the multiple chat responses, but this will let everyone know at least what we know in terms of this additional funding. And again, I don't think it's been approved yet. The budget amendment is being reviewed. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on this. This is something that could potentially be good for multi-use trail planning and development across the Commonwealth. Of course, 5 million is not a windfall of cash when you come to developing trails. However, it could possibly do some preliminary engineering or something. So anyway, just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that.
Great, thank you so much for that, Shane. That's really exciting. There's a comment from Peter about the Secretary of Transportation. Yes, this is very exciting that there is a new, Secretary of Transportation. If you aren't aware, it's Pete Buttigieg has been picked by Biden to be the next Secretary of Transportation. Cool. So thanks, Shane. Thanks, Peter. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Last call for comments or questions. All right, we will see you guys in January. So have a great end of the year and happy holidays. Okay. Bye, everyone.